Today we've got another exercise tutorial to help you. In this case, we're covering the bird dog exercise. We're going to be breaking it down all the way to the easiest variations for those of you that are in a lot of back pain or a lot of sciatica, you're really struggling with some of those symptoms, so that you can learn the foundations and then build back up to the normal exercise, the standard bird dog, and how to do that, and then build on from there with some additional progression strategies so that you can make the most of this exercise. In this video, I'm going to go through all of the different variations in order, starting at quote-unquote level 1, which is going to be a real breakdown, and then we're going to build all the way up. The best thing I can suggest you do is watch through and maybe work through each of those exercises just after I've been through them or with me, so that you can feel which one's challenging enough for you and get it right. And therefore, you can find the appropriate level that you need to start this exercise at. Ideally, you're aiming for a difficulty or a level that you can do 10 reps without aggravating the pain. That's an important point. So take time, maybe go away after this video and practice some of these so that you can learn to do your variation for that 10 reps. Once you find the right variation for you, you're going to take that into your workouts. And whenever you're doing the bird dog, you're going to do that variation. And after a couple of days, maybe a week or so, you're going to come back to this tutorial, look at the next level and try that. Test again. And then if maybe you've gone up 1 or 2 levels, maybe you've just gone up 1 level, or maybe you're not quite ready for it still, so you go back into your workouts. And regularly, every so often, you're going to come back to this to see which variation you should be progressing onto, because you should not stay at level 1. Your goal for absolutely everybody is to progress through these variations so that you can benefit from this exercise and make sure that your rehab is progressive. The primary objective when we're doing this bird dog exercise on all fours like so is that we maintain a neutral spine, that as we're doing the exercise, we're not twisting or bending one way or another, allowing our pelvis to move. Very similar to the dead bug on the floor, which there's a full tutorial on that as well. You want to make sure that this spine stays steady. If you're arching your back, if you're twisting your back as you're doing the exercise, you're going to aggravate symptoms, and your job is to, again, go and find that variation that you can do without making these errors, without aggravating the pain, so you can move forward safely. Now, just before we get into level 1, a quick test for you, using a container or using a cup or a bottle or something. You're going to place this, like I'm doing now, on the sacrum, and then you're going to try and do the various reps. Now, don't do this the very first time you try it, but it's a great test to see if you are wobbling or twisting the pelvis. You'll see me doing a couple of reps on each of the different variations of this exercise with the block on my back or the tub on my back. And you'll see that if you do it wrong, it's going to fall off. And that's a good indication that you're probably not holding that spine steady enough. The other thing is, if you've got something about this high, this is a good couple of inches, you will feel it wobbling a little bit, which is your cue to slow down those reps, get a bit of that control back in, and make sure you're holding this section steady. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into level 1. This first variation is going to use half reps. So I'll go through a brief setup first. We want our arms to be around about shoulder width apart. For those of you with any wrist problems, you might find it's more comfortable to do this on the knuckles in a straight position. It just puts the wrist in a slightly better position. You can also use dumbbells to hold on to, but I would suggest either flat palms or the knuckles. Make sure when you're in the starting position for all of these variations that you're pretty much perpendicular to the floor in your arms and in your thighs. If you're in this sort of position, it's going to make it a lot more difficult or just feel strange. And equally, if you're bunched up like this, you can see what that's doing to my back. The spine should be in a nice neutral position, and we should be engaged, the head looking down. Don't look up like so, just look straight. So my spine is completely neutral. And then in this position, we tighten everything up. We focus on our 3 points of contact other than the leg or arm that we're going to be lifting, and we're doing half reps here. So with the arm, my left arm here, the arm closest to you, I'm engaged everything tightly, and then this goes light, and I just lift it up and back down. Brace everything else, left arm, left and right leg, and lift the other arm. And then back down and repeat. And you will feel the subtle changes in engagement as you go from one arm to the other. Now, the next step here within level 1 is to do exactly the same half reps for the legs. So here, we're going to have our 2 hands engaged into the floor on our shoulder girdle. We're going to have my right knee, the knee furthest from you, pressed into the ground and engaged. So my whole body's nice and tight, which makes my left leg, this one here, go nice and loose or nice and light. And then we lift it back and then come back. Plant the 3 points, lift, and back. Plant the 3 points, lift, and back. Plant the 3 points, lift, and back. And that's how we do the leg variation of this first step. Now, if during any of these you have any knee discomfort or anything like that, you can always feel free to use a cushion underneath the knees. It might be best to do this on a mat like I'm doing here or on the carpet, just so you have a little bit of that extra comfort as well. Now, level 2 is about reaching the full distance. Again, we're still only using the arms or the legs one at a time. But what we want to focus on here is as we're doing these repetitions, it's more about reaching over that way or reaching back that way rather than arcing up towards the sky. We're looking to reach as far as we can when we're doing these to really elongate out lengthways. The temptation when people do these often, especially with the leg component, is to kick the leg up as if they're doing some sort of glute exercise. And that's not what we're doing here. We're really focusing on maintaining that neutral spine as we go through this exercise. So level 2 for the arms, I'm reaching all the way up into that direction. So same cues again, engage everything nice and tight, the 3 points of contact. And then here we go to reach the arm up and stretch as far as we can and then back. And notice that stretch is just coming from my arms as I'm doing this exercise, reaching as far as I can towards the end. I don't want to look up as I do this because that will often skew my lower back, and also it's just not particularly good for the neck. Now, the second part to this level is going to be using the legs. And now I'm reaching as far away as I do this. So again, I'm braced and engaged, nice and tight, everything's engaged, get nice and comfy, and then I'm reaching back as far as I can, and then coming back in. Engage, reaching back as far as I can, and then back in, and engage, reaching back as far as I can, and engage, out as far as I can, and then back in. And you're going to look for 10 reps, 1, 2, 1, 2, all the way through for each of these variations to find which one is going to be harder for you. Generally speaking, the arms are going to be a little bit easier than the legs when it comes to aggravating the lower back or challenging the stability of the lower back. With both of those two variations, the main error you're going to make is that arching of the lower back. Now, of course, when you come back to flat, you shouldn't be rounding the lower back, but that's a less common error that people make on this. Just really focus on holding that spine nice and steady, reaching out in the opposite direction, whether it's your arms or your legs. And once you've mastered those, this is going to be almost the full bird dog. So level 3, we're talking about half reps. This is the first one where we're going to be using both alternating arms at the same time. So again, we set ourselves exactly the same as we've done for the previous exercises, and we're going to be 4 points of a table. And now we're going to be lifting the opposite arms and legs as we go for this exercise. So keep everything nice and steady, and we're going to engage everything tight. Make sure we're planted with the 2 load-bearing limbs, and then we're going to make these go light and just half reps. And back in, re-engage, and out. Back in, re-engage, and out. We're not trying to stretch too far. That's going to be the next one. But nice and easy as we're doing these. Imagining that cup or box is on our back, keeping our spine nice and steady, keeping our core tight. When we're doing all of these, to the degree you do or do not engage your core will dictate how difficult you find this exercise. You should be really bracing everything nice and strong. If you don't hold everything and you don't focus on engaging when your arms and legs come back onto the contact with the mat, then you're not going to find this as effective and you're going to wobble quite a lot. And that could really aggravate those of you earlier on in your recovery where you've got a little bit more sciatica or a little more back pain. You're going to flare yourself up more. And quite frankly, those that are further on in your recovery, you're actually relatively far on in terms of symptoms aren't that bad. You're not that sensitive to these sorts of things. You might get away with doing these in a substandard way and wobbling a little bit more, which is why for you guys, it's even more important that you're testing yourself to make sure you're maintaining stability by using things like those blocks on your back every so often, just to make sure you're not rushing through just to get it done. So now we're getting to the full variation of the bird dog here. We're going to be using our arm and leg, reaching as far as we can in opposite directions, not elevating up, but just straight out towards opposite ends of this room or the room that you're in at home. And make sure you keep that control. You come back in and you set nicely. So let's get into position again. Nice and square, nice and engaged, and then hold everything tight. And here we go. I always find it's helpful to have my toes on like so. It just gives you a bit more dynamism. You're a bit more in contact with the ground. Brace everything up nicely. And let's start off with the first reps. We're going to come out, reach as far as we can, and then come back in brace everything, and then come out, reach as far as you can, and then come back in, brace everything, and again, reach out as far as you can, and brace everything, and reach out as far as we can, and brace everything there. And that is our baseline. Now, these next two variations are actually called the bear crawl, and we're going to be doing it forwards and backwards and left and right. And I will preface this with just mentioning that this is one that's a lot more physically demanding. So for some of you, maybe your upper body isn't quite as strong as it needs to be. You might struggle a little bit more in this one, not necessarily to stabilize your spine, but just to do the reps and support your body. Because here we've got our whole body engaged. We're not quite as rested between each one of those reps. Everything has to be tight, and you've got to make sure you keep control throughout the entirety of this workout or this exercise. And with the forward and backward variation that we're doing here, when I'm going to do it, a lot of you guys, you're going to have limited space. You're not going to have a 30-meter track that you can do this on. You're going to have maybe your living room or maybe your garage. So you're going to have to do forwards and backwards. And that makes it a little bit more challenging in many ways. So if you're doing this with me in a moment, you're going to feel that concentration when you get to the end of the forward bit and have to now go into reverse. But do your best to hold everything steady. This is really going to demand a lot of coordination and control, which is going to be very good for many of you. And to the degree you find this control difficult, it's something that actually practicing is really going to benefit you. So the first one is going to be this level 5 progression. Level 4 was the full normal bird dog. But here we're going to be, instead of being on our knees and hands, we're going to be on our hands and feet. So we're up in this position here, okay, ready to go. And that's the whole exercise is going to be in that position. And then we're going to walk forwards a couple of steps, and then we're going to walk backwards a couple of steps. You can do this as far forwards or backwards as you've got room to do, but I'm just going to go 1, 2, and then 1, 2 to come back into position. So what we're going to do, everything nice and neutral. We pop up into position, shoulders and arms nice and strong. And then all we're going to do here is one leg comes forward and one arm, and then the other leg forward and arm. And then we're going to go back 1, and then back 2, and then back up and back up and back up and back up. And that is your bear crawl. Now, as I mentioned, you can go forwards as far as you want and back as far as you want. Just keep it symmetrical. Some of the temptations when you're doing this one is to stick your bum in the air and just walk forwards like so, or to arch your back a little bit. Just make sure you're keeping that same stability that you've had on the previous levels of this exercise in this one too. You would have seen me in the earlier part of this video doing this with that block on my back. You know, you've got to really focus when you're doing this, otherwise you're going to lose it a bit. It's supposed to be difficult, it's supposed to be a challenge. So for this last one, which is the left to right variation, I'm just going to do it at a slightly different angle for you guys so you can see it a little bit better. And exactly the same starting position as the previous. We're in position, hands braced, bodies engaged, the whole trunk from shoulders all the way down to the pelvis. And then we're locked into position. And here we're just going to lead again off to the side. So we're going to go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And that is going to be our lateral left to right bear crawl. And before we get to a few of the final details with this particular exercise, we do have in the exercise library full follow along reps for each of these exercises. So once you've chosen your various one that you're wanting to do, you can go ahead and follow along with 10 reps at tempo of each of these variations that we've done in this video today. Now you might be thinking, okay, well that's fine, Mike, but what about using weights or using bands? And there are variations of this where you can use these. But in the making of this video, the writing of the article, I really got thinking about it. And I think fundamentally, we're really wasting our time if we're using the weights or the bands on the bird dog exercise. And here's why. Firstly, it's very, very cumbersome to do and organize, and you might not have the equipment available. But secondly, and more importantly, there are going to be, once you've got the spinal control necessary to perform maybe level 4, 5, and 6 of this particular exercise, there are going to be other exercises that are way more powerful for you rehabilitating and strengthening your core and your back and your spine in general. And those are going to be the squat, the hip hinge, and particularly the split squat or step up or reverse lunge, one unilateral variation. Because with those, you're going to be using significantly greater weights over time. You've got a greater capacity to scale those resistances and really build proper strength and integrity. And there's a lot less faffing about or messing around in those. And those exercises also are going to really build true strength in a way that modifying the dead bug, modifying the bird dog, the bridges, some of the other ab exercises that we traditionally think of as core exercises just can't compete with. To help you understand how to incorporate this tutorial into your specific rehab, Know that the bird dog is a beginner exercise. It's one that's very, very safe, very accessible. And you can use that as an exercise in of itself to strengthen and rehabilitate your spine in those very early stages when you're not doing a lot. But later on, what we would call in the program phase 4 kind of level, where we're really building strength and stability back into our spine, our core, our back, our hips, etc. This is really going to be relegated, even the likes of the bear crawl that we've done at the end of this video, but certainly the bear crawl, the bird dog, dead bug exercise, which is a very, very similar one. Those are all going to be very useful warm-ups and engagement practices for your workouts. But actually the meat of the strengthening is only going to be done with higher order exercises like those I've mentioned, squat, hip hinge, etc. Because they are the ones that are actually going to take your strength and your stability and your spine health to the next level. These will just serve as nice engagement exercises to warm you up at the start of a workout. And as you'll find out, if you've done a couple of sets of those bear crawls, you're going to feel pretty engaged, pretty tight, and a little bit sweaty already. Ultimately, the bird dog is a very common beginner exercise, and hopefully with the various breakdown levels that we've put together here in this tutorial, you can find something that works for you. Know that this is going to be an accessible exercise for absolutely everyone. It's very similar to the dead bug, but if I'm honest, I much prefer the dead bug modifications for a number of reasons, not least of which you have those extra sensors that you can place on your back or on your core using your hands to feel it. I think it's just a bit more friendly. But for those that maybe rolling onto your back is going to be difficult, this can be a great one to at least get you doing something. You can always kneel on the floor in some way using the bed or a support to get down there. So it's a great way of you just starting to move forwards. And often when you've been struggling with lower back pain or sciatica for a long period of time, you've had lots of MRIs, differences of opinion, you've tried things that haven't worked, just getting started and having the confidence can be very difficult. And that's why we've put together these sorts of tutorials. And there are many others on the website and as part of the program to help you guys have the confidence. You've got some verifiable tools that work that you can break down and adjust and tailor to your specific starting point and then build up from there. And as long as you do add that last part in and actually build up over the weeks and months, the variations that you're doing through the levels on these exercises, you are going to be well on your way to rebuilding and getting your back in shape again. If you made it this far through the video, thanks so much for joining us. Hopefully you have found it helpful. Remember, we've linked to other tutorials and other videos down in the description below, so you can check those out. And we look forward to seeing you in the next one.